Hello, my name is Alexander Carpenter. I'm a professor of music at the University of Alberta in Western Canada, where I'm also the director of the Wirth Institute for Austrian and Central European Studies. I'm very pleased to have a chance to talk about my research in this video, and I would like to thank Ursula Moser for the opportunity. My connection to the University of Innsbruck dates back to my time as the former chair of the Wirth Institute's Academic Advisory Board, and I have also had the great pleasure of being a visiting professor at the university's Institute for Musikwissenschaft. And recently I have co-authored a research paper with Ursula Moser on the topic of French Canadian music. As a musicologist and cultural historian, my research interests are twofold: European art music, and specifically Austrian music of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and popular music. My interest in pop music is largely technical: style, genre, and aesthetics. But I'm also interested in how the ways in which we talk about pop music shape our understanding, how meaning is informed by discourses, scholarly, journalistic, and public. In this regard, my approach to contemporary pop music sometimes intersects with my study of the music and culture of the past. Most recently, I've taken an interest in Beethoven. This began, in fact, with Mozart and an examination of the mythology of Mozart, namely Mozart as a composer whose work emerged sui generis from his imagination, untouched by the world around him. Of course, it's possible to demonstrate how Mozart was part of what I consider a larger musical ecosystem, that is, of late 18th century Vienna, and as such, how he was necessarily influenced by his contemporaries, including Antonio Salieri, the putative villain of the popular film Amadeus, and a notorious lesser light languishing in Mozart's shadow. I studied some connections between Salieri's operas and Mozart's, which hint at Salieri influencing Mozart and not the other way around. This was not to tarnish Mozart's reputation or to elevate Salieri's, but rather to illuminate some of the creative interactions that are inevitable in a dynamic milieu like Vienna. This led me to Beethoven. In 2020, I was fascinated by the resurgence of the trope Beethoven was black, which became a viral meme on social media. While this idea doesn't hold up to scholarly scrutiny, it hasn't for about a century, this was not the point. Beethoven had suddenly and improbably become entangled with the 21st century social justice movement. This was, to my mind, a demonstration of the malleability of a cultural icon like Beethoven, but rather than take the nihilistic approach of, say, Slavoj Žižek, the Slovenian philosopher who has argued that Beethoven is an empty signifier, capable of meaning anything to anyone and thereby meaning nothing, I turned to Lydia Gür, who has coined the term doubleness in her account of the aesthetics of 19th century Romantic music. My project has involved examining Beethoven's reception history from the late 18th century to the 21st century, via this lens of doubleness, which insists upon maintaining the tensions between contradictory facts and realities. In this way, one is not debunking or demythologizing, which again seems a bit nihilistic to me. Rather, it allows one to find ways to negotiate tensions between truth and fiction in history. And part of this process involves examining how such tensions emerge through various types of discourse. So, using this approach, one can look at Beethoven in the early 19th century as at once an iconoclastic composer set apart from and immune to the demand of the workaday world, devoted to art to the exclusion of social norms, but at the same time a demonstrably adept self-promoter who was actively courting patrons and building his reputation for much of his career. At the beginning of the 20th century in Vienna, one finds a Beethoven resurrected by the young generation of modernists as a mascot, a high priest of art and a symbol of artistic freedom, while at the same time, a Beethoven invoked by conservatives as a classical composer, a bulwark against this very modernism. During the Second World War, one finds a Nazified Beethoven, described by German musicologists as essentially a proto-Hitler, a man with a Führer personality. Simultaneously, across Europe, Beethoven is used as a symbol of freedom and resistance against Nazi tyranny. Today, Beethoven has been adopted by Black Lives Matter as, if not a Black composer, then an advocate for Black cultural history, an ally in the re-examination of history that seeks out excluded people of color. But Beethoven is also described as emblematic of the very traditions, the white supremacist institutions of classical music, that have excluded or marginalized people of color for centuries. The German journalist Gabi Reucher has posed the opposite question: who does Beethoven belong to? My response to this question is to pose a series of questions of my own. Is he a challenger of the status quo in 18th century Vienna, or is he a collaborator with its aristocracy? Is he the monument of the Wiener Moderne in Vienna 1900, or is he the cure for its tradition-destroying modernism? Does he symbolize the struggle against Hitler and Nazism, or does he embody the struggle of the German folk against inferior cultures? Is Beethoven Black, or is he the chief impediment to inclusivity in the world of classical music? In each case, Beethoven's doubleness emerges. But what is the value of this doubleness? For one thing, it challenges the dominance of single narratives in music historiography. And for another, it permits, indeed, it encourages, progressive and productive philosophical inquiries into music history and musical meaning to flourish, avoiding, in Beethoven's case especially, both the sometimes wanton nihilism of demythologizing and the potentially unnatural synthesis required of dialectics. Part of the pleasure of doing history for me then resides in navigating and negotiating the interwoven threads of truth and fiction that constitute our understanding of the past, and of exploring resurgent patterns like those that constitute Beethoven's reception history. This has been something of a side project for me, but in a way it encapsulates my orientation towards musicology, and it allows the embracing of cultural and intellectual history as part of my study of the music of the past. That's it. Thanks for watching.